Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the very first broadcast of In the Round. I've been so excited for this. The minute I got it, I'm like, ooh, that's going to be so much fun. I can't wait to start it. And then I'm like, oh, who am I going to have? But thankfully, I get to do life with these three awesome ladies. And so I'm going to introduce them to you really quick. We've got Debbie Kitterman. She does Dare to Hear. She has a podcast. She does some classes. She does mentoring. She's a writer. Just Debbie Kitterman extraordinaire. We've got Lisa Perna, and she does Touched by Prayer, which is a Tuesday night broadcast. And then she does Crown Chats, which is every morning of the week, Monday through Friday. I don't know how she does it, but she does it. And she's currently working on a book, and, you know, just awesome Lisa. And then Lila, she does like blog posts, and she is intercessor extraordinaire. And she also does this group for intercessors called Neighborhood Watchmen. And it's really like this awesome place to like land and get encouraged and to get information and just intercede together, like in unity over neighborhoods and cities, towns, states, and our nation, right? So it's just awesome. So I'm so blessed to like get to do life with these three ladies. And so it's very fitting that we are going to be talking about relationships tonight. And we will probably end up having to do like multiple parts to this because this could go on forever. But I really just kind of felt, because of how the Lord has connected all three of us, like if we just kind of dove in and started talking about like kingdom connections and what that looks like, and kind of like the truth and the purity in those. Because I think a lot of times we've heard kingdom connections and kingdom relationships, and there have been a lot of people that have been wounded by that. And so I just kind of felt like we needed to kind of talk around this stewardship and purity of those relationships. And I kind of wanted to just quote Proverbs 13:20 because it just made me giggle, but it's awesome. It says, walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. And I just felt like I have become more wise because of these ladies. And so I get to walk with the wise. So if one of you guys kind of has something you want to jump in, and we're just going to start this conversation, and welcome everybody. Hello. And here we go.
There's a lot of fun names I see over here from different places, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Well, I think, go ahead. What were you going to say, Deb?
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the thing that I love about our connection, it was all divine connection. Yeah. This was not something we purposed or we planned, but this was something that Papa really did, because Papa connected me with Lila, and Papa connected me with Debbie, and Papa connected me with Amy. Yep. All in different times, all in different seasons, but all for specific reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. And really for me, just the essence of, you know, who God created me to be happens to be relational. And I'm a very relational person. And I really think we're all meant to be relational. Really, I think, you know, we may have, and we can talk about that. I think people can have, you know, an introvert, I'm extrovert type of personality, but God made us to be one. He said that you and I are one, and you and we are one, and you and the Father are one. And so we're all created to be in relationships. So I think some of that might not always be the truth of who we truly are, but yeah, the relational and connecting and being in connection with God's people. I mean, I know, like you, when you meet someone, it's almost like you've always known that person. It's kind of how you know you're supposed to be in connection with them, because guess what? We were in the Father before we ever came. So
yes. I love that.
And I think it's really important too, because I think sometimes Lila, you made a really great point that I think sometimes we can go with what our soul prefers. I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert, I'm a little bit of both. But when we really look at it, we were made for relationship. The Father made us for relationship, and He said it's not good that Adam was alone, so He created Eve. But it really comes back to our relationship. We go to the greatest commandment, which is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your soul, and you love your neighbor as yourself. So here we have this relationship piece, right? And then what makes it messy is that we don't always agree on things. But when you find your tribe of people, when you find your true connecting and your true friendships, that's where things really begin to click, and they become like your family. Now, family can be messy too, but when you find your tribe, that's the important thing, because I'm big stickler on you don't quit family, and that you fight to the end to be with family, and there's messy in relationships, but that's what gets us and to grow and to mature, and it's iron sharpening iron and helping us to grow in the things that we need.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely found that, like, when the Lord kind of connected me with each of you, and of course it was all different times, I always felt like I was just very, open and real with people, but it wasn't until He connected me with people that I saw more as like life kind of friendships, where I felt like I could be really vulnerable. Like, all the skeletons in the closet kind of get revealed, and but I found a safety, not a fear, in that. And I think that that's really something that I had never really experienced before, because, there were people, in my life, in that past life kind of thing, where, you think that they're safe, and then, you share something vulnerable, and then it becomes the next selling ticket to the gossip train around town. Right. And I think we've all experienced something like that, that when you begin to get connected with God connections, then you find this refreshing and this safety. And I kept thinking about that verse in I had to write it down because I forgot where it was at. It was in John chapter 15:13, where it says, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And I just kind of began to like uncover like all of those layers in that scripture, right? Like, I lay down my life for Debbie and for Lila and Lisa. Like, what can I do to help you become better? What can I do to champion you on? But also on the flip side of that is, how can I come into relationship and maybe say, you know what, I think you need to maybe look at this a different way, or I think you need to maybe work on this, or I think you need healing here. I mean, there's a correction in that laying down, and part of that correction, we have to lay down our fear, and we have to lay down our offenses in order to have that reciprocating, vulnerable relationship that the Lord loves to build, and build that kingdom of unity. Because once you have that cohesive kind of vulnerable family kind of thing, then he likes to put that on display, because that is now showing others what relationship and what going through life looks like. That's what I've seen Him do with all of us since He's connected us. He's put us in front of other groups of people, saying, this is kingdom, this is tribe, this is family.
In that same verse, because that's where I was reading, that's why I smiled, because I was looking up in that same verse. If you're reading in that, because you read 13, but if you read in the Passion in 15, it says in 11, if we back up a little bit, because he's talking about, he said, my purpose for telling you these things is that the joy that I've experienced will fill your hearts with overflowing gladness. So this is my command: love each other deeply as much as I have loved you. For the greatest love is a love that sacrifices all. And he goes on and on and on, as we know in chapter 15, and he's saying that you show that you are his intimate friends when you obey what he commands. And he says, and And he's saying that your joy will be fruitful and you will be fruitful. And after he's done saying all that, he says, so this is my parting command, love one another deeply. So that whole verse about being in the vine is really also about being together, because that's what he's saying. Your joy will be full if you obey my command. And my command is that you love one another deeply.
That's good. And the other thing I was thinking about, well, the first thing when Debbie was talking about being messy, the first thing that I saw was Thanksgiving, right? Thanksgiving is one of those times that everybody's in the kitchen and it's messy and everybody's cooking and we're trying to get it done. But there's a beautiful coming together where everybody starts to bring and to share, and we put it all down and we sit at a table and we get to share a dinner, share a meal, and share our love. But it was funny because from that thought came this verse in 1 Corinthians 12:12. It says, just as human body is one, though it has many parts that together form one body, so too is Christ. For by one Spirit, we all were immersed and mingled into one single body. And it says, no matter our status, whether we are Jews or non-Jews, oppressed or free, we all are privileged to drink deeply from the same thing. And so and then it goes, so if the foot were to say, since I'm not a hand, I'm not a part of the body. And that's what I love about us. It's like, sometimes I'm like let's just say sometimes I'm like the backside, and then sometimes, I'm the hand, and then sometimes I'm the foot. And, we change. We change because sometimes, we get silly, and sometimes, but that's what I love about us, is because in our group, in our tribe, like when we all get together, we know how to have fun, but we also know when things need to get done.
Yeah.
And so we all work together, nobody having like, I'm too good to do this or I'm too good to do that. It's like when and it was funny when we were in Nashville, like I was watching, like you guys are like moving things and I'm still like talking, because that if you wait for me to get my crap done, you're going to be waiting a while and you're like, we got to go. So you know my weaknesses, and you still love me in spite of them. And so you'll take up where I know the things that Debbie needs, or I know the things that Lila needs, or I know the things that Amy needs. And so we'll always think about each other. That's what family does. That's really what family does. And that's what I believe we have family. I mean, yeah, we can call ourselves a tribe, but I think it's way more than that, because the connections that we have, it's like, I think of Lila and she's like calling me. I'm like, I was just thinking about you. Or I'm thinking about Debbie and all of a sudden I get a text. I'm like, I was just thinking about her. Or Amy's like calling me. I'm like, I was just about to call you. Right? It happens because guess what? We're tied together.
Yeah. And I mean, and all of us, I mean, we've known each other, I think, for a grand total of maybe 3 years plus or minus.
No, Lila and I have known each other.
Yeah, you and Lila have known each other longer.
Yeah, we've known each other longer.
Yeah.
But I met Lila in 2015, right?
Yeah.
2015. I met Debbie in 2018, and I met you in 2018. So you and Amy, you and Debbie, Amy, are the same.
Yeah. And it's like, but it doesn't even like matter like with the time, because it feels like we've done our whole life together, but I mean, even in that, like, we're still learning and growing in our relationship and in our communication and all of that. And, and we do love each other. I mean, I know you said despite our weaknesses, but I sat there and in my spirit and I'm like, but it's because of your weaknesses, right? Because of your weaknesses, I still love you, because what you've got your strengths and weaknesses. I've got mine, you know what I mean? And it's like, but the way the Lord has like knit us all together, it's just, it's like what you were saying, one body, and when you said, I'm like, oh no, I've been the butt, I've been the butt. You went there. We're thinking.
I know. Well, and that's the part about it. It's like, like with you guys, I can be like, yeah, I've been a real ass. I'm sorry. But I'm just saying, like I can be real. Like I can say, guys, like I really messed up. And you're not like, hey, did you hear what Lisa did? If anything, it's like, hey, did you hear what Lisa did? We need to pray for her. hey, let's circle around her. How do you think we should help her?
Let's buy her chocolate.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Send her some coffee ice cream.
Yes.
Take her to Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes. Exactly.
For coffee, not donuts.
No. But if they happen to have chocolate covered donuts, it depends. Now, actually, the duck donuts, seriously now. Seriously. But
Yeah. That was true love. Because since I
Right?
moved to the South, because when she went, I was like, I can't find maple bars anywhere, and nobody knows what they are in the South. And she's like, oh, I know.
Really?
Yeah. And so they're not here. So she went to Duck Donuts and got the maple bacon. I was like, yes, still a little different because it's the Southern take on it. But I was like, you love me, Amy.
we might have to have a duck donut delivery to Jersey.
Yeah. Might have to.
For some reason,
Amy,
you're frozen on me.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, it's like, even like when we come in and out of seasons, right? Like, cause all of us, we all have our own seasons that we're kind of walking in, but somehow they gel together and then they go into like a bigger season that God's kind of orchestrating. And, and sometimes you get like growing pains, right? And you're like, oh, that I wasn't expecting that, or I didn't anticipate that. And, I've sent some text message or phone calls like, I'm sorry, I've been a really crappy friend. I haven't talked to you for like a week, and just apologizing for that. Cause it's like, ooh, I've dropped the ball. And I think that's, something that I told the Lord, I'm like, if you're bringing me into these relationships, I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good sister. I want to be good at this, relationship thing, because before my healing, I was a narcissistic jerk. Okay. I'm just going to say it. I was very selfish. And a lot of the times I would go into these relationships in a very parasitical way, right? You get what you want. And then okay, I'm done with you. I mean, that's just how horrible I was, as a broken mess that I was. Right. And so when coming into these relationships, I was very, timid about doing that, because my heart was, I don't want to hurt these people. I don't want to be selfish. I want to steward the absolute treasure that these people are, that you're bringing to me, Lord. Like, I don't want to let you down. I don't want to let them down. I don't want to be hurtful. And so I was very like cautious and like arms at a length, but he very quickly like chopped my arms off, and he's like, it's okay. You can embrace this. It's going to be safe. Like, it's safe for you. But in that, there's this, question and this desire to steward conversations and relationships well. And unfortunately, all of us, and I know everybody in the chat, we've all been in relationships that weren't stewarded well. And so when God does bring you connections, he brings healing to those wounds from past relationships. And so I thought maybe if you guys wanted to maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, because I think it's really important to understand too, right? That some people, and I know I've talked about this before, and this was really helpful to me because I have such a loyalty thing in me that I will stay loyal and true even when I shouldn't stay loyal and true. And so you have to figure out the people that are around you. And somebody had sent me a teaching at a really low point in my life, just completely radically changed my thinking, whether you like this person or not. I never really had listened to this person. But it was really about the comrades, the confidants, and the constituents, and figuring out the people that are around you, because not everybody is for you, right? You have constituents. They want something from you. They're going to clap, they're going to cheer, but when the going gets tough, they're not going to be there for you. And I had too many times let people that I thought were my confidants, but they were really my comrades or my constituents, get close to me. And so I'm like your ride or die person. Like, I'm going to be with you to the end, like until you cut me and leave me bleeding on the floor, which happens way too often, right? But then there's times when you realize, like, even with our group, like, we're together in it, but we're also in different seasons. And yet I know that you're not just a constituent, you're not just a comrade, you're actually confidants. And how do you know that? Is the season that you're in, that they can celebrate you as you get promoted to a season, because they know their promotion's coming, or they just had a promotion. And so, we've all celebrated that together. And so it's really hard. You've got to figure out, like, sometimes relationships aren't what you think they are. And you can't let those weaknesses in you, like, I think loyalty, you're like, how is loyalty a weakness? But it really can be, because if you don't see things through God's perspective, and you're so worried about the fear of man or any of those things, then it can easily, did I go away? Like my computer's doing something funny.
No, you're still there.
No,
No.
we still have you.
I don't even know where you're at, so I'll keep talking. Anyways, it's really important that we figure that out. Somebody else should talk while I try to figure out where my window.
Well, I think that's a good point. Jesus, he had his 3, right, that were really close. And then he had the 12, and then he had others. And I think that's a good way of looking at it, because it is important to find out who those are close to you. I think to be most like Jesus and not to live in fear is, we always, when the Bible says to guard your heart, it doesn't mean to keep people out. It really means to keep all their junk from getting into you, is all it really means. And so it doesn't affect you. But that doesn't mean we can't be smart. And because I'm a very friendly person, I just went through a transition where I left here, where I have really good community, and I was gone for an entire year. And it really set me, and I'm a very friendly person. I do not consider myself stupid. I've been around, but and I'm older, and I've had many relationships. But because I am super friendly, I just open myself up sometimes too soon, and I'm pretty friendly with most people. And I got bit really hard, and I haven't been in that in a while. And so it's still good to like be smart of aware of where people are. Not that I close down immediately, but it's just using wisdom. And I think that is something worth talking about and exploring, that you don't become a shut door, because I meet so many people that have been so hurt. You can't be their friend. You just can't. They're so wounded that they won't let anyone in. And I really don't think that that's healthy either, because, you're just in relationships, you're going to be vulnerable. And Jesus was vulnerable, right? He came and everybody had an open door to him. Now, again, I still think there's levels.
Mm-hmm.
So I think exploring how you stay open and not a closed door, because especially in ministry, I cannot tell you how many people I've heard, well, they're just not good with people. And I'm like, well, funny story is ministry's not about puppies. It's about people. So if they're not good with people, then they shouldn't be in ministry.
People, not puppies? Come on.
I love that.
This is talking about a pastor. They're pastors.
I know.
They're just not good with people.
Yeah.
I love that.
No, and I really liked what you said, Lila, too, is that we're supposed to guard our hearts, because I remember when we were pastoring and I was really wounded by somebody, did not see it coming, and very wounded. And I said to the Lord, I am never giving my heart away. And he immediately said, oh, yes, you will. And I'm like, no, I won't, because I left it bleeding all over the floor. Right. And he's like, you will. And it was like, he walked me through, what does it mean to put a guard on your heart? And I think that's something that, those people you can be vulnerable with. And it doesn't mean that there hasn't been times when we've said something to each other that we're like, ooh, that really hurt. But yet at the same time, we have that communication that we can talk with one another and say, that really hurt me. Oh, I didn't mean it that way. Right. And so we can dialogue about it. But when you're in leadership, it isn't about puppies. It is about people. And so that is such a good word. It is such a good word.
Well, the other thing too is that, especially in ministry, and especially with women, because most of your churches have women, and because the church is a place for sick people. Can I just say that?
Yep.
And so people are coming with their stuff, with their baggages and their cuts, and some people are oozing and bruising all over the place. And usually they're going to find those people who carry that mercy gifting. They're going to, it's like they hone in on those people who carry that gift of, listen, I'm here for you. It's okay. I love you. I'm going to be here for you. But because they're wounded and bruised, they then hurt the mercy person. So then it causes all these problems. And one of the reasons that that the Lord really kind of started, like the conference Daddy's Girl, where you all have been a part of. What's really beautiful about Daddy's Girl, it's really putting together the girls. It's putting his daughters together in a room, not catfighting, not competing, but loving each other and accepting each other and celebrating each other.
Celebrating.
That's, you know me, I'm all about a celebration. I love to celebrate people. I love to promote people. It's part of my DNA. And sometimes it's bit me in the butt. See, I go right back to the butt, don't I?
Yeah.
But what it has taught me is that I still have to be me. I still have to be me. Lila has to be Lila. Debbie has to be Debbie. Amy has to be Amy. And it's what I think I have learned in this short amount of time of doing ministry is that God is going to bring those people who are supposed to be close to you, and you're going to start to find commonalities between them so that it becomes a safe place. Because I think that's what God is really doing. I think, like, even this discussion tonight, I hope that women start to build these bonds and these relationships, because we need each other. Back in the day of Jesus, women were with the women. They weren't with the men. So if they weren't getting along, there was a problem, because now they were going to be alone. They were going to be following Jesus all by, but they were going to be away from the men.
Well, and here's another thing, though, and it's not fun to admit, but the Judases get us to the cross, and all of us are supposed to go to a cross. And so sometimes we think those people are not the Lord.
No.
But they just help you rip that flesh right off, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you can go to your cross. And that, again, we don't want to always talk about, we don't want to be not have wisdom, and we still want to have good boundaries. We, just because we're prophetic doesn't mean we throw that out the door. And just because we're prophetic, we don't use it to put up walls, right? There really is a godly structure, order in this. And I think this is such a good topic, because again, it's either that you have, but again, those Judases, I just wanted to throw that in there. They really help us go to the cross faster.
100%.
And we're like, God, can you change me to love like you do? In walks Judas.
Let me show you.
That's not how I meant that, God.
But he's like, how fast do you want to get there?
Exactly. The other thing too is that we have to keep into account who Judas was. He was close enough to Jesus to kiss him.
Yeah.
We have to remember that the Judases that we get are going to be close enough to kiss us.
Yeah.
So it's going to hurt.
Maturation is always going to come in relationships because of betrayal, right?
Absolutely.
And we become more merciful and gracious once we've experienced the depth and the pain of that too. And like I've always talked to myself and other people about like a dartboard, and our relationships fit on that dartboard somehow, some way. You've got your inner circle, like those are your ride and die people. And sometimes the real painful truth is that sometimes your family members aren't even in your bullseye, right? Mm-hmm. And then each circle is a boundary line, right? So the next outside, they don't get to be privy to all of your stuff, right? And it begins to, you begin to learn how to steward and set boundaries for people in your life. They can be on your dartboard, but you have to decide like what those boundaries are and where your trust level is with each person. And that really comes with time. And all of these things that we do in our relationships fall under this canopy of discernment. And it's not for judgment, and it's not for rejection, right? And as we go through these relationships, like for me, I was on the other side of the coin. Like I was just very like hard, and you screw me over once and you're done, right? Like I would just cut people off.
Amy, you always talk about yourself like this, and I'm like, Amy, no.
I know, but that's the beauty of healing. Yeah. Because I was that way. I'm like, you messed me over, I cut you off, you're done. And that was over, and I did not like women. I didn't want to be friends with women. I mean, I had my mom and my sisters, and that was cool, but I didn't want women in my life. I felt like they were catty and they gossiped and they were shallow and da da da. I mean, and all of these, labels for women. But I made myself very unapproachable too, right? So people were like, other women were kind of afraid of me because, like, ooh, she's mean, and so I had to be softened. And the Lord had to show me, oh, you're going to say you don't want to be friends with women. Well, look what I'm going to do to you. I'm going to heal you, and I'm going to show you what you really need. I'm going to show you that you need these women in your life. We need each other. Like,
Yes.
I said earlier, we need each other. I mean, it's great to have guy friends because they're straight shooters. I love that about men. They just straight shoot. They tell you the truth, whether you like it or not, But the Lord has really been putting me with women that are just the way I am. I'm just going to say it. Now, I'm trying to say it nice. I'm going to try to not hurt your feelings, but you begin to like grow in this grace and this mercy and this love covering all, sacrificial love that comes into these relationships. And what this hardness will rob you of that nurturing kindness that God has set in each and every one of us. And it comes out differently in each of us, right? None of us are cookie cutter. And but it all falls under that canopy of discernment and how we steward these relationships, and coming into these relationships, I was honest. I'm like, hey, I've been hurt by people. I've been wounded. And they have always been very open, because I'm like, if you see something, say something, right? It's my willingness to not be offended if they see something that I need to work on. That's part of our own stewardship when we step into relationships. You have to choose to not be offended when it comes to your healing and your vulnerability and your willingness to walk through life with your, ride or die bullseye people.
And I think it's good that you call them bullseye, because they
Yeah.
hit the target. I think
Yeah.
that's really a beautiful way of saying, because like I really do feel that, you guys in my life, you hit the target. You not only do you get me, but you can help to sharpen me. You can direct me. You can speak into my life. You're able to tell me the hard things. And there's a couple people who aren't in this discussion who are also a part of our family. But those are the individuals who can come in at any moment. Like you were saying, oh, I'm being a bad friend. But honestly, we all have stuff, and we can go like Debbie was traveling. We didn't get to talk to Debbie, but as soon as she came back and we got a phone call, or we connected. It was like we picked up where we were. We don't have to talk to each other 17 billion times a day, although there are some that I do. But
yeah, and I think that's important too, because I think you can tell with those relationships that when time goes by, that you pick up right where you left off, and that there's nothing, because you just are open and vulnerable with one another. I want to say something about Judas, though, that I think sometimes those Judases are in our life for two things: one, for them, and for us, and we each have choices. Judas had a choice, and I think even after his choice, I think the Lord would have redeemed him too. Absolutely. After what happened, except for he short-circuited the ability for himself to be redeemed in that. But it's like Peter did the same thing. He just betrayed him in a different way. And so we have those people that are in our lives to build character in them and in us. But that's where the life gets messy. I had a friendship that I was with somebody for 10 years, and it came to this point where it was like they got mad about some really stupid thing, right? And so then it was like, well, I'm just done. And I'm like, well, how can you be done after 10 years of relationship? Like, hello, like all the time, like in each other's life. And it was like, well, what do you need from me? And I'm like, well, I have to think about that. And then I went back and told them, this is what I need from you. And they couldn't do it. And it was simply as simple as, I need you to trust that I can hear from the Holy Spirit for myself. And if we don't agree, that we can agree to disagree. And she couldn't do it. And so 10 years of relationship and friendship, like all of that gone.
Mhm.
I just walked away from that going, I don't even know what to do. Cause it's not like I can make it right. She made a choice. And so I think we have to look at those things. God is always working on us to develop our character. I call them grace growers.
Yeah.
You know, and even the closeness within us. I think we extend grace to each other sometimes too, right?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Mhm.
okay, if you see something, say something. That's not always comfortable.
No.
But
Right.
we do it because we love one another.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I
and
think it's also good to recognize that God will bring us people that we come into relationship with for only a season, right? And that's where that canopy, that discernment comes in, that we function under, because we need to understand what those seasonal people are for and how to enter into and exit out of those seasonal relationships with grace and love. And because I think we want everybody to be part of our life relationships, and that's not feasible, right? That's
and
you can't do
people
life
come
with
and
everybody.
go. We're on different different paths, and I see this a lot in ministry where because I've been involved, and I'm sure you guys have too, in many ministries. And Deb, you've been a pastor, so I'm sure you'll really resonate with this, where people come in and out of churches even, or ministries, and they're in and out. And I see a lot where it's hard for the leaders to let them go and not take it personal. And I think we do the same in our own lives when we have to really, like Amy said, be aware of these people, because I've had God take people out of my life and it was absolutely just excruciatingly painful. But when I really went to the Lord's like, Lila, they can't go where you're going.
Yeah.
I need you to let them go. Yeah, it's sad that it happened this way, but they had to go because we have to grow sometimes, and so do they. And sometimes when that grace, quote unquote, grace, even though it is a choice, lifts, if you're not listening to the Holy Spirit and you continue to try to hold on, that's when it usually gets ugly, because there has to be a tearing away somehow. And so I think, again, it's really important to make sure you are, going to the Lord, because the Holy Spirit's our friend, right? He tells us these things. Sometimes I forget to include him in this because we're so emotional of maybe, like that friend, Deb, that you had for 10 years and you were so invested, and you're like, and yes, it is a choice sometimes, and it could have been done a better way, but they were probably going somewhere, or you were going somewhere they could not go.
Yeah, and that's true. And I think you made a good point too, because as a pastor, we would have like people that spoke into my life, like Papa Carl. He's passed on and he's in heaven now. But he used to say to me, "Deb, I'm not coming to your church." I said, "I don't care." But even people had like expectations of, oh, we became pastors. I'm their friend. Now they expect me to come to their church. I'm like, I don't care where you go to church. That does not dictate if we're going to be friends. I mean, and he spoke into my life. He was a spiritual father to me, more like a grandfather because of the age. But but it was so funny. Every time, I'm not coming to your church. I'm like, I never asked you to come to my church. Can we move on from this conversation? But sometimes other people have these expectations that we think they think we have it towards them, and we just have to stop that. We have to stop making assumptions.
Yeah.
Because we could go there. What happens when we make assumptions?
Yeah.
Go there.
Back to the ass thing.
Back to the backside again. And that we just have to like let God bring people in and out of our lives, because I think, Lila, you're absolutely right. I had to let go of that relationship. And I see that now on this side of things, because had I held on to that relationship and fought for that, and how did I start the show? You don't quit family, right?
Yeah.
Somebody that's in your life for 10 years, that's family. And
Right.
yet there are times when seasons dictate that you don't quit on them, but you do have to release them back to
Yeah.
God. And
Yeah,
so
that right there, Deb, is, I think, the exact point is, yeah. And again, it comes back to that point where you said it's a choice, and we do get a choice of how we end that relationship, even though it doesn't feel good. I think that, because I've had a lot of people go and then come back many years later. It's kind of like you say, don't burn a bridge, and it's hard to do, because like you said, when you're involved in that and you have your heart in that, it's difficult. And nobody likes that. Nobody does.
No.
No. And the other thing too is sometimes people just like your friend Deb, nope, I'm done. It's like, what? And that, that's where we start to go inward and start beating ourselves up. But if it was just a God thing that they had to leave, it, what I've learned is that so many people that I thought I did something wrong, I actually realized that it was they had something going on in their life that just couldn't allow them to stay. And it's funny about the burning the bridges. I have a really, really good friend. We've been friends for a really, really long time. And we've had these times, we were just talking about this. We have these times where we were friends and we weren't friends, and we were friends and we weren't friends. And this last time that we broke up, I'm like, that's it, we're done, whatever. But the Lord said to me, he started to bring this individual back. And I was like, all right, I now have boundaries. I now have boundaries, and I'm putting up these boundaries. I didn't have boundaries before. I didn't. And so these boundaries, I'm like, no, but you guys know me. And so it didn't take long, but the Lord really spoke to me. And he said, can I ask you a question, Lisa? And I said, sure. He says, when Peter came back, he goes, did I make him sit over in the corner? Did I make him have to do something? Did I have to make him say, okay, you're not in the inner circle anymore? It used to be Peter, James, and John, but now I'm bringing in Bruce. You go over there, Peter. He didn't do that. When Peter was reinstated, when he was restored, it was
That's such a good story, Lisa.
as if he didn't do it. Now, this is what we need to get to, because we all got stuff. We all have stuff. And so my friend and I, when we were talking about how now we're restored and we're so happy we're back together because we realize how much we love each other. But what's really interesting is we had to go through that process to grow separately, to be brought back together, so that now we can continue to grow together, because we were in two totally different places. But when we restore with people, we can't hold it against them, because it says that love holds no record of wrong.
That's right.
Ding, ding, ding.
So we have to, as believers and as leaders, we have to show that example to other people, because people make mistakes. They just do, because of whatever craziness is happening. But in order, when somebody comes and we apologize, people are like, no, I will never let them in again. It's like,
well, and it's hard to find in the church and anywhere where there is a falling out, and it very rarely do you see the reconciliation. I've looked for it because I've tried to make that reconciliation. There's a friend of mine on who you guys know, and we had a church together, and they were my worship leaders. And boy, howdy, did we go through a hard time. I mean, we went through a really hard time, and it was shocking for both sides of us, because it was so difficult. We were not getting along. And it was like, it was like oil and water suddenly, the way the enemy can come in different things. But I'm proud of us, because it's one of the very rare relationships that I've experienced where it was that hard, but we consistently said, this is so hard and we don't like it, but we're not giving up. And we're still really good friends today. And there's none of that there. But it was hard. But I'm proud of how we overcame that.
I'm actually very proud of you too, because I was walking with, and it was hard. But that's one of the things, is that we learn, because we are being transformed. And the more we're being transformed, the more that we can forgive, the more that we can love, the more that we can accept people's shortcomings, our shortcomings too. I'm not saying, because dang it, I got tons of them. So, but I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress.
Well, and Jesus, like you said, that's just such an excellent thing, about Peter and how he let him in. And through that process, through the process, right, you learn about Jesus and how the nature of who he is, right, and what love really is. And you don't learn it any other way.
No.
You just don't, until you have to, the way Jesus did it is that the hate that we gave him, he absorbed it. Like, we hated him, we beat him, like the whole world came against him, and he just, right? He just took it in, and he didn't, and it's like, that's a whole nother level of where I believe we are going in these next days. I believe the relationship, in Jeremiah, it says, I gave them one heart and one way. I mean, it's something he does, but it is somewhere we have to go. They were there in Acts. It says they had all things in common and they loved one another. And in the times of adversity, it's going to bring us together, because it's our greatest weapon is unity. It's something we're learning and we're going to get to, don't you think?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I don't think the church doesn't do well. They don't have a good concept of godly unity, because I think in our natural minds, it's, well, we're unified if you agree with me. And that's not what it is. It's setting down our preferences. It's submitting to one another. It's submitting to my own opinions, my own rights, my right to be right, to what the Bible says, and submitting it to God. And I also think too that the church really misses the whole restoration and reconciliation piece. They don't teach on it, and they quote one-liners. I really hate when leaders in churches and pastors, because I was one, I can say this, when they quote these things about, well, you have to restore, you have to reconcile, when they don't really understand the fullness of what that means and what that looks like. Because Jesus really taught that you can have some restoration and reconciliation, but you still don't have to be in a relationship with people that hurt you. And it's all about boundaries, and Jesus was good about talking about those things. And we have to understand, like, why did the church have one heart, one mind, and they were unified in everything? It's because the Spirit, above all else, was speaking to all of them, and they didn't have any of their own selfish desires that were coming out. And when they did, well, we saw what happened with Ananias and Sapphira.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People died.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we've all, stumbled out of, fallen out of seasonal relationships very ungracefully, and, here's some matches we ride at dawn kind of thing, like I out, I'm out, but through a lot of times of, like, especially like with my dad, we had a big falling out, lots of family drama, where we didn't have, relationship at all. And then, the Lord brought back this whole, reconciliation, restoration. But I was very like, I don't know about that. I've been clobbered a lot by this person, but because I was willing to walk through forgiveness without an apology, right? We have to do that sometimes. It was sacrificing some flesh, because I was just, I was done, and I think what the Lord really does is he puts us in a position to restore people when we allow him to sacrifice our flesh and what we think, like what Debbie was saying, when we lay down our stuff and we allow the Lord to work on us and our stuff, the idea of loving and forgiving and restoring, with or without the reconciliation of that relationship, there's a restoration to that relationship, even if they never come back into your life. Because what is done in the spirit manifests here on the earth. And, you may never have a conversation with that person again, because maybe they were just really that toxic, but it releases you and it releases them for that restoration in a different place and in a different plane, right? We can't just function here on the earth. And I think also one thing that I've learned the hard way is setting, because I think we all just in a knee-jerk way do this. We set expectations on people that they aren't able to fulfill. Mm-hmm. And then we find ourselves disappointed in their inability to fulfill our expectations of them. And so back to that discernment thing, when we function in that way and we begin to kind of take inventory of each of those relationships, we begin to see where they're at in life, and we begin to journey with them. And then in that journey, and then we can set realistic expectations of those people and of that relationship. And then you're no longer expecting an empty well to be drawn from, right? Like I had this like one liner pop in to my head. I don't remember when it was, but it was when I was kind of learning about this. And it was like, my expectation of you will never exceed what you are capable of pouring out. Like, if you can't pour out, then I will never expect you to pour out. You know, my expectation of you is just as a person, and how do I journey with you through this difficult thing called life? And how do I do that well? How do I do that to the best of my ability, to not do it in a hurtful way, but also in a way where I'm not going to be walking on eggshells around y'all. You know, I did that, and it was not a good situation, you know, and I did it because I loved that person. I didn't want to hurt them, but me not stepping on some of those eggshells was more harmful to that relationship than if I had just stomped on them a little bit, you know, and been honest about some things, or been more transparent instead of so protective, right? There's all of these caveats to these relationships, and we have to be able to be moldable and you know, discerning, and how we look at them and what they are capable of doing, and reassessing our needs, right? Because we all have needs when we come into relationships. So what are my needs and what are my expectations of this relationship? And are they capable of that? And if not, then I need to adjust that, and then just talk to the Lord about how we steward that and how we journey. Because we all, as we're journeying in this time and multiple seasons and just life, and it just gets messy, and we get growing pains, right? We have these growing pains where we kind of, you know, we need to kind of like recommunicate and readjust, you know, how we're talking to each other, how we're, you know, kind of walking through this new season together, and readjust our expectations and our needs. And that's how you grow, and you avoid those growing pains from creating a situation where you just want to burn the bridge and hands off and call it quits, right? Like, because I think we've all been there.
But I also think that one of the things that I've learned, especially like being with you guys, and especially after moving into some new ways of doing relationships, it's through discernment, it's through prayer. Because if I'm seeing something that I'm questioning, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take it to prayer. That's the first place I'm going to go. Instead of it being a knee-jerk reaction to a trigger that I still might not have dealt with.
Yeah, that's good, Lisa.
Because you know what? The enemy is always after relationships. He's always after relationships. I don't care how tight we have to protect what we have. And there have been many times that the enemy has tried to come in and tried to tip over our apple cart. And we're like, don't touch our fruit. Yeah. So, you know, I've had to have these conversations because I'm like, because the Lord tells me, you know, watch this relationship because there is something trying to come in. And so the first place that I have to do is I have to go to prayer. The second place I have to do is I have to trust my relationship to have a deep conversation, a truthful conversation, because nobody, including myself, we don't want to have any type of a confrontation. So we will avoid confrontation at all costs because confrontations make us uncomfortable. Because what if that person in that confrontation says, you know what? I can't do that. I'm done. And then they're gone. And so we have this fear of rejection. We have this fear of abandonment because it's happened. But when we start to understand that if they're not for us, then we have to let them go. That's really what it comes down to, because I am for my friends. And if I'm not for my friends, you will see me slowly. And I will just like saunter off into the sunset. But if I'm having hard conversations with you, it's because I love you and I'm willing to fight for it. I'm not going to let the enemy come in. And so if we're willing to let go of things, it might be time for us to go into prayer and just say, okay, Lord, is this a they thing or is this a me thing? Because if it's a me thing, they don't need to know about it.
Well, and we have to be, you know, aware that what is the enemy's name? He's the accuser of the brethren.
Come on.
So the accusing is always there in us. He's always accusing someone, you know. let's just do a simple thing like walking into a room, and maybe you know some people and you don't others. And, you know, people can lie and think they're thinking about other people. Really, you're like, oh my gosh, this person may be thinking this. And what if they're thinking that? And what do they think about my hair? And did they say this? And you know what the answer is usually no, because everyone else is too busy thinking of themselves too, to be thinking of you and what you're doing, if we're being real. So assuming that everyone's thinking of you and all these nitpicking things, that's not coming from them. That's usually coming from the accuser of the brethren and yourself, because, you know, let's face it, we're too self-centered to be thinking about everyone else and what they're thinking. We're thinking about what they're thinking about ourselves. So first of all is recognizing, do we do that? And how can we be healthy? Because we have to live in a place of trust. That's what God teaches us, to live in a place of faith. And so if you're not a person of faith in people, in life itself, and then in people, again, you have it in Jesus first, because the love stems from him, not ourselves, no matter what. We can't be love on our own. So if you have faith in Jesus first, and we have to learn, and I've had to learn to do this because, you know, I guess I'm self-centered, you know, and I think these things. And so the Holy Spirit's had to teach me. No, they're not thinking that, Lila. Maybe they're thinking good thoughts. Maybe you're self-centered and you're the only one thinking about you. That's probably true. It's probably true. And it probably is. Maybe that person isn't looking at you and thinking, oh, she looks fat in that dress. Maybe she's just wondering if there's anyone there she can talk to, you know? So having faith that when you walk into a room or these new places with people you don't know that well, if you find yourself in that place, I think it's a good place to start within yourself on, are we grounded and rooted in love? And is this coming from a place of love? Because love, like you said, it's not suspicious. Love isn't hearing all these things. Where does that come from? That comes from the accuser of the brethren. Now, yes, there's discernment, but discernment doesn't come with that same type of torment.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, and I liked the teaching that you were talking about, Debbie, the 3 different categories, like the ones that are basically like the ones that, and in the audience applauding, you know, they're there to get something from you, right? They're just there to receive whatever it is you have. And that's fine, right? But sometimes you've got people that are in that receiving line that they want to be in your inner circle, you know, and when it goes from, you know, being in the applauding section to desiring inner circle access, that's, you know, I get very cautious about what I call parasitical relationships, because they're there to suck you dry and they will make you sick, you know, and so I've seen this so many times, and unfortunately I've seen it more, you know, in ministry than not. And I'm seeing these, you know, these parasitical relationships, like, what can I get from you? And what can I get from you? You know, it's this networking thing. And in this networking parasitical relationships, they're titling it tribe and family and spiritual father, spiritual mother. And they're really just bastardizing those relational titles. And they haven't been earned, and they haven't been fought for. And so I feel like, you know, just, I mean, this is probably going to have to be like a part 2, but, you know, but I think that there's been so much wounding in these titling positional relationships that people have just been chewed up, spat out, put through the grinder, and then some. And they're going, but they said that they were my spiritual mom. And they left me feeling more abandoned than my natural mom. Or, I mean, the stories are multifaceted, right? And I just kind of felt like I wanted to kind of hone in on just that, like just a little bit before we wrap it up. And like I said, this is probably going to need to be a part 2, because this could go on for a long time. But I just kind of felt like maybe just listening to some of the wisdom that's kind of come to the table tonight will maybe help you kind of evaluate current relationships you're in, reassess them, like pull out your dartboard and reassess, each of those relationships and reassess those expectations. And I think you're going to find that when you do that and you move them around, like you don't have to announce like, hey, I'm moving you out of my bullseye and I'm putting you on the edge of my dartboard.
Come in, Bruce.
Come on in. I think you'll find more safety in your circle.
Mhm.
I think you will find the ability to actually heal from some of those other wounds that might be inhibiting your ability to step into these more vulnerable God connections that the Lord's doing, because that's what I'm seeing, especially this year, is this vast move from God, like really knitting people together in unity and relationship, because he does not want anybody out there by themselves. He doesn't want anybody isolated. This is,
Right.
in friendships, this is in family, this is in ministry, this is in the workplace. I mean, everywhere you have relationships, God is knitting everybody together, because there is something that he is needing all of us to do in this hour and in the seasons to come, where we are all linked together and doing life together and healing together and growing together and disagreeing together, right?
Yeah.
But without the division and the cancel culture that has been so prominent in the church and in the earth, right?
Right.
So I just kind of felt like, maybe we kind of wrap it up here, and then maybe we plan on a part 2 where we talk about those spiritual relationship titles, and maybe the Holy Spirit will go somewhere else with that. But
That would be good. And it reminds me, because at the beginning of the year, the Lord had told me it's the year of 22 together, and just the coming together of single people and just the different connections. But I really feel like, Amy, you're really hitting something with the spiritual connections, and when you were talking about family, but they're just really being used as a way to, like, in a way, it's kind of like that, what is that term you used earlier about who you were? Narcissistic,
yeah,
spiritual type of mothers and fathers that kind of want to get you in there just to say that, they kind of build you up, they get you there just so you're there, and they don't really want you to go anywhere else. Come here, but you're not really family. And I think that there's a real need for people to be able to understand, hey, am I a part of that type of a really bad relationship? Can that happen as a part of a spiritual? How much more vulnerable are we for those types of really bad relationships under the guise of spiritual, because it's all good? Because I know all of us have been there, and God wants to bring us into a place of freedom and true love, and a true love for one another under that umbrella. So that might be a really good conversation.
I think so. And I think especially because the hardest thing that I've been seeing are people don't have like tribe, because their tribe was in a church, and because of the scamdemic, the churches got shut down because of the wounds and the hurts that have never been addressed. They've been hurt. They've been basically, put out, so they have no place to go, and so they're looking. Women and men. Can I just say that women and men are looking for family? They're looking for a place where they can talk about God, where they can grow in God, where they feel safe. And that's been like the Lord's really, really putting me in it. And I'm like, Lord, just make me a safe place.
Yeah.
Just make me a safe place. Because if we can learn how to be safe places for the broken, for the wounded, in a safe place or a safe house is where people get restored. In a safe place, in a safe house is where they get built up, where they can become safe, so that they can go out and they can become a safe place for people to come to them. Because Jesus was a safe place. The people who were sinning were never afraid to come to Jesus. They went to Jesus. The leper went looking for Jesus because he knew it was a safe place.
Yeah.
So as we're talking about that, what Lila said, the twos, look, the disciples went out by twos. They did not go out as singles. There are no more lone rangers, because you know what? You could be ministering from the front, and there's a whole lot of stuff that you're not seeing from the back. So by having two people together, you have double the discernment. You have double the word of knowledge. You have double the prophetic gifting. You have double the wisdom. It doesn't make sense anymore. In this time and season, it does not make sense to be out doing stuff by yourself. And if you feel like you have to because people don't get you, then you need to go and spend some time with God, because he does. And he's going to fix those things so that you can do things with other people. Because remember, if you're by yourself, you're only a foot or a hand or a butt.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when we go back to the constituents, the comrades, and the confidants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're that for other people too.
Yeah.
You have to evaluate all of your relationships, and relationships are give and take, right? They're give and take. I give, I take, you give, you take, and it's a shared thing. But if you find yourself in a relationship where they're just taking from you, it's not a relationship. Or
Right.
if or you find that you're giving all the time and there's nothing that's coming back, that's a relationship that you need to reevaluate. And that teaching like helped me evaluate the relationships in my life, because sadly, especially when we're in ministry, and you ladies all know this, there are people that want to be close to you. They want to be their constituents. They want to ride your coattails. They want what you have. They're coming in and they're like, I want this, I want that, but they actually don't want to be in the game. They just want you to give them something. And so we have to be discerning. We have to be mindful, and you do have to find your people that are there. And it doesn't mean people don't adjust back and forth, but I think for too long in the church, we've taught things wrongly. And so the Lord's like, now can we just like redo everything and start over so that we can now come into this? Because ultimately he does want us into good relationships that are spiritual, which I think we'll talk about the next time we're together. Because there's vulnerability in people, and they're just, don't get me started tonight. I won't go there. But I think we all need to evaluate our relationships, and we all need to do some assessment. And Amy, your bullseye thing is really good.
It is.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, it's important. And I think, because, you hear these terms out in the world like, oh, I've got your six, and I immediately, when I hear that, I picture two people back to back, they're able to see the full 360, right? And that's why a minimum of two, going out, like, it is that 2 by 2. And I think that, when we're talking with the Lord, and we're, if you are kind of isolated right now, put that at the top of your prayer list, at the top of your list, like, Lord, I know you created me for relationship.
That's
And
right.
I'm asking you to heal me, A, and B, bring the people that you have for me into my life, because you did not intend for me, you did not plan for me to do this life alone.
That's
And
right.
I feel like that's like the real heart cry for the Father. That's been my prayer. Like, Lord, like, what is on your heart? Like, what is not just breaking your heart, but what is your heart beating for? And I think the big thing is relationship.
100%.
And everything in relationship, like Debbie said, it's give and take. It's this reciprocating, conversation that goes up and it comes back. If we're talking to the Lord, it goes to his ear and it comes back to ours. And that's with everybody in our lives. And even though I'm doing life with these people, we're different. We're in different geographic locations, but we are very intentional about our communication. We are very intentional. I can't even talk, with our time and how we are investing that. Because if you're not investing into something, you are not going to have a return on it. And we don't invest just to get a return, because we just know investing is smart.
Yeah.
And it's beneficial. It's not just to get a return. And it's a mindset shift, but it's also a heart shift. And that comes in our healing, in our willingness to be intentional, our willingness to be vulnerable. And, it's that inviting people into your home, but then those bullseye people, like, they have free reign of the house. Like, yeah, go ahead, go into the kitchen, your family, just help yourself. Yeah, okay, so the bathroom's down the hallway, but if you need a towel, well, that closet's here. You can open up my closets. People that I don't know, I'm walking them to the bathroom to make sure that they know where it is. They're not getting in my closets,
Yeah.
No, and most of the bedroom doors are closed.
That's
but when
right.
family is there, the doors are open, and they are there to make it their home. And that is what we are to each other, and that's what God has for everybody here. He has people that are home to you, that you can lay your head and you can be vulnerable and you can have those ugly cries and you can like fall apart in your mismatched pajamas, and there's no judgment. There's just this
That's like
love
the
and
best.
healing that comes. And it
Like
is,
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for stuff like that,
I
because
was terrified of that stuff, but now that I have it, I'm like, how did I survive without this?
exactly. And I remember this encounter I had with the Lord. And sometimes I struggle, I'm sure all of us do, with feeling alone. Even though I have a lot of friends or whatever, I can feel this aloneness. And one time God just really, he just put me on the floor. And he is like dousing me in love. And all my friends, that I have a good community here. We're in this church and I'm having this experience. I have no idea. I'm not aware of anyone. And this is going on for a while. And he is just like bathing me in his love. It's just something, I guess I wasn't a good receiver of his love, which is why I would feel so alone. And in this process, he said, Lila, I put love all around you. And when I opened my eyes, I had a whole circle of friends. And he said, I put love in each one of them.
Yeah.
And that's where we really, sometimes we feel these aloneness. And for me, I didn't realize that my receiving, but I'm a giver. I will give. But I struggled receiving, having love, not understanding that. So God puts love in these people, like you three are part of that. And when I'm with you, I get love. Like I feel the Father's love. I feel love for you. I mean, Amy, the first time I met you, it was like, oh, I just love her. And there's this love that goes back and forth. The same with Lisa and the same with Deb. And we get that God didn't create us just to get love from him, but love. That's why he says, love one another with a deep, love one another deeply, because that aloneness can really set in when we don't know how to receive from others and we don't have a tight knit. Not everyone gets to be a part of that, like we said, but when it's there, that safety, that love that comes, boy, you really can be full of love. And that's part of how you do it.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to say is that, what you said, Amy, about praying, I prayed for a very, very long time for you guys. Mm-hmm. I prayed for a very long time for friendships like this. I prayed for Lila. I prayed for Amy. I prayed for Debbie. I prayed for Mama Karen. I prayed for Margie. I prayed for these women, these incredible women, to come into my life, because there was a time that I was so alone. And I felt so like I was that second wheel, maybe we'll call her, maybe we won't, but I felt so disconnected. And I prayed. And so I'm here to encourage those women, those men who haven't found their tribe, to pray, to ask the Lord, because just like Lila was saying, that, we're not created to be alone. Even Jesus could have done his ministry by himself, but he chose to do it with people, because God is relational. So if you don't have people, start praying for people, because I keep seeing and I keep hearing the Gigi's, which is a bunch of women who got together, who formed their own tribe. They formed what we have. Uh-huh. So you can mimic what we have, but it'll be your own, with your own people, with your own like getaways, with your own laughs and your own secrets and your own little, jokes that only you guys know about, It's possible. Yeah. It's possible. So I just want to encourage you, because I know that there are so many people who are struggling right now, who don't feel like they have that community. But if you pray for it, If you pray for it, God is good and he will give it, and he will start putting people into your life. And the thing about the Gigi's, none of them live in the same state. None of them. They're all over the place, just like us. We do not live in the same state. We're all over the place.
Yep.
But we do get together, which we'll be getting together again in September. But we get together. We go on trips together, or we'll do something with one another, because we make that time. Because what?
What are you singing?
I'm singing that "Let's Get Together." Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was like,
You and I combine. Remember that song?
Yes.
yes.
That was from Parent Trap.
Yes, it was.
Yep.
Oh, actually, 3 do. No. Only 2 live in Florida. The third one's coming. Oh no, that's right, 3. But somebody else is going to Florida. Somebody else is in Florida too. Yeah, there's going to be 4 Gigi's in Florida.
Oh,
And I didn't realize God knows what we need in those relationships.
That's right.
And Lisa and I have told our story when we've been together, and then God brought Debbie. I was at such a low point in ministry, and some devastating blows within a short period of time. And I was, I'm here to button it all up. And I couldn't with these people. They were just like, no. And I knew that I had found what I was missing in my life. And I was like, how is this even going to work? Like, my brain is like, how is this even going to work? Like, I'm on the West Coast. They're all over here. Like, they're this knit together thing. But it was because the Lord said, this is the peace. This is the peace. And, I said to Lisa, she's like, well, it's really glad. I'm like, usually I'm ready to go home by now, but I'm actually leaving a piece of my heart with all of you. And that's when you know that you know what I mean? And I've traveled and I've spoken at a lot of conferences. I have not found my people like I did when I was there. And it was just, there's something that the Lord knows about timing. He knows about what we're missing. He knows about what we need. He knew who I needed to sharpen me. He knew who I needed to sharpen. And he just did it. When he does it, when he breathes on it, it's unmistakable.
Yeah. Because it was the same one that I came to. And that was my first time connecting. And I was coming out of a place of a lot of rejection and isolation, and so I had my own room, keep my distance.
We spent the night there for a little while. We
Not me. I was in my
But
bed.
Lisa and Jenny came and slept with me
for a little while.
She abandoned me in my room.
There's no sleeping at Daddy's Girls. What are you talking about?
No, there really isn't. And
I don't remember sleeping at all, except when I went into a coma after 34 hours of being awake. And they're like, wow, you can sleep through anything. I'm like, it's called a coma.
But I went there and I was coming out of this isolated place. Like, I didn't have anybody. I mean, I had connected with people online, but it was very distant, and it wasn't, very conversational. I mean, there was one person that I've known online for 7 years, and that's Kimmy. And she knows me, and so when I went out there, Debbie was out there for the first time, but I think I said to Lisa, I'm like, I just came here to connect, but I'm leaving here with family. And that was something, I'm going to get wrecked, because that was something I didn't feel like I had, because in that beginning stages of healing, I had said, I'm an orphan, I didn't have my parents, and I didn't have that family. And then I came there and it was just like, God was like, here you go, take it or leave it, and I'm like, I think I'll take it. And it was slow for me, but I was like, no, this is really who you want me to be with, isn't it, Lord? And then it was just very natural. And it didn't matter that I was going back to that isolated place in the state that I was living in that I wasn't very happy about. I now had people that I could talk to and connect with. And, that was more than just Kimmy, and Kimmy was she's walked with me through a lot of stuff. So I got to give props to Kimmy, but she's very camera shy. So I don't know if I'll get her on here, but these women, it was a gift from God, and it was a prayer that I didn't realize that I prayed. To be honest with you, I didn't really realize what I was asking for when I said, I need people. I didn't know what I needed, but God did. And so, that's really what it is. I mean, when he says that he orders our steps, he really does. And he really does. Like, it takes a lot for us to even think about screwing it up. We give ourselves way too much credit. Outside of just full on walking away from him, he's ordering our steps. He's very intentional. And when you talk to him especially about relationship, that is number one priority for him. That is what his heart is beating for in this hour. Yeah. And that is that relationship for each and every one of us, not just with him, but with the people here on this earth to do life with, to establish kingdom with, and go forward with, right?
Yep. Well, the kingdom is within us, right?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So we've gone for like an hour and a half. So we'll go ahead and tie this up with a little bow, and we'll just say we're going to do part 2 at some point. We'll get schedules and calendars all worked out to see when we can come back and do part 2. Because I think it's important that we do come back and talk about actual kingdom type relationship and how we steward that, how we make the bride, the church, more unified and stepping forward in all of that. Like I said, that's a whole nother can of worms that we won't open tonight. All right. So I'm just going to say thank you for coming and joining us tonight. This was so much fun.
It was fun. Thanks.
Yeah. And then we'll just put an announcement out there for whenever the next one's going to be. I don't know if I'm going to do it weekly or if I'm going to do it bi-weekly. I haven't decided yet. But we'll let you guys know in enough time, and we will see you then. All right. God bless. Have an amazing week. Bye-bye.
Bye.